That is because it is hell. And
Nice,
also, yeah,
nice.
I don't know if you ever, I was a big fan of Art Bell. I used to listen to, internet streams of just nonstop coast to coast when Kyle and I would run these machines out in the woods, clearing property for people or whatever. So all day you're out there 8 hours, and I would just put my headphones in and turn on this Art Bell stream and just listen to 8 hours of coast to coast while I was driving the machine. And he talked about that a lot. He was like, look, as a radio host of a call-in show overnight on full moons, the weirdness is cranked up to 11. That's just how it is. And you can
Lord,
tell.
yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
So I totally agree. I never thought of the moon pulling water around though, and that's awesome. That's a great correlation.
Pulling our gray matter around it.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. And then you look at you look at sort of magical interpretations. I mean, even if you're not even magically operant, like the number of legends where things certainly happen on full moons, and you're like, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for me, and where I think a lot of this value is that, I mean, I know that y'all tend to talk about alternative history more than the supernatural, but for the supernatural and me, I mean, it's all about comparativism. That's where the real show is, and it's never about saying, it's all. It's never about saying that it's all your aliens are fairies and all your fairies are aliens, and
right.
or these aliens are coming from this star system or whatever. I anytime somebody says anything like that, I shut down.
Yeah.
But if they say, look at this and how this compares to that, it's crazy. I mean, for example, coming back to this Bigfoot thing, are you guys are familiar that there is no shortage of Bigfoot prints that feature 3 toes, right?
Yeah, I did know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they always look so damn goofy when you look at them. They look like, this sort of like 3 big splayed toes with a giant elongated heel.
Right.
And a lot of the flesh and blood materialist cryptozoologists want to say things like, well, that's syndactyly, where your toes fuse together. Well, that's fine if it's 1 foot, but rarely does syndactyly, even in humans, manifest the same on both extremities. But if you look at Native American lore, they're talking about monkeys with chicken feet. If you look at there's one story of a fairy queen from County Limerick in Ireland who was upset that some people had moved into her land, and she actually would turn into a lot of different creatures to scare away the people who had settled near her fairy mound. And one of the things that she would turn into would be an ape with rooster's feet.
Oh, wow.
It's just nuts. And I think that, I've said this sometimes too, and I don't know why people aren't hip to it, but even if all we're dealing with is the idea that we have these shared archetypes between people of all different races and cultures that are so fundamental to the human experience that they're shared throughout everyone across the globe, and sometimes they manifest and manage to peek through and have some sort of physical impact and maybe even some sort of visual confirmation, and they're just collective unconscious tulpas, thought forms.
Yeah,
that's like that to me is probably
that's still amazing.
It's still amazing.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems like that's the least of what's happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's something like that.
I mean, even if that is what's happening, let's just say that is what's happening. That's astonishing in so many ways. We'd have to change so much about how we even view the universe and about like collective consciousness and human beings in general and our effect on the world if that's what's happening. So 100%. I agree with you. That's
100%.
That would.
Yeah. And to me, like I said, that's almost the most sensible explanation. That's the least involved explanation, and it's still incredible.
Yeah. So I know you. So when I was going through A Trojan Feast recently, you reference Jacques Vallée's work a lot, and I've read. I love his work too. What do you think about the way he was looking at the whole UFO situation, where he was starting to get the idea like messengers of deception and stuff like that, where he's saying, right, this seems to be purposefully misleading us. Why would it be doing that?
I mean, I think that time is going to be very kind to what Vallée has written.
Yeah. And
I think that a lot of people misinterpret some of the stuff, and not you, but a lot of people misinterpret the stuff in Messengers of Deception in terms of being like a control idea about like manipulation. It's more like keeping, sort of like more like keeping, being a regulator, like a thermostat.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And one of the things that I know that that Terence McKenna once said when he was comparing sort of his thoughts to Vallet's thoughts was that there are certain events that there's a certain side of reality that exists to sort of come up or arise in opposition whenever we become too entrenched in sort of scientism and materiality. And you know, to McKenna, it was even sort of manifest in something like whatever Christ was, sort of being a challenge to the way that the Roman Empire was sort of metastasizing and taking over the world. Yeah. And this idea that something like the UFO exists to overtake and to sort of push cultures and societies and peoples back towards the imaginal. I kind of have a similar idea of this myself, that if you can look at sort of religions in general as a cyclical thing, you've got, you know, the pagans, and then then religion comes along to really codify and to set up strictures and strict, I mean, not that paganism isn't a religion, but you take my meaning. Yeah. Really strict, structured religions come along to sort of codify a lot of these ideas. And then atheism takes hold, and because as a reaction to how restrictive these religions are. Right. And then paganism comes in and reacts to how reductive atheism is. And then religion comes in. So you've got this sort of cycle. Paganism, religion, atheism, paganism, religion, atheism. And I think we're sort of, right now, I think we're in the middle of that cycle from that atheism to paganism sort of transition. And if you look at, I mean, this is coming back to that idea of being sort of a response to the way that people get entrenched in scientism and materialism. If you look at the tenor of conversation around these topics now, it is not like it's been in a long time. Yeah. I mean, people are talking about this stuff. People are believing in this stuff. People are accepting other people's experiences more than they ever have. I mean, I haven't been super involved in this for a long time, but just looking back, I mean, I would venture to say that we're probably in the middle of a cycle that hasn't really seen this sort of superstition. Sounds like a bad term, but I hope you'll take my meaning. This sort of superstition since like 1850, and obviously in some cases that's bad. Because
like pre-World War I, when they were still doing when people were still doing having the seances in their house. It was like we reached that level, and then the World Wars hit, and then everything went to hell. Yeah, I agree with that. Exactly.
And then sort of coming out of that is the mechanistic sort of world wars and loss of innocence. And a lot, sometimes being superstitious is bad. I mean, and I think the sort of fake news is sort of the sort of fake news epidemic in all its forms, right and left, is sort of an outgrowth of how people are willing to follow their instincts more than their heads. But there are also a lot of good things in people following their instincts instead of following their heads. I mean, it's interesting that people, the magical renaissance is a real deal. Like, I didn't really think it was, but I was driving to the beach this past summer, and in the middle of nowhere, like 30 minutes outside of Jacksonville, North Carolina, not Jacksonville, Florida, but Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is just the home, to Camp Lejeune. Not like a big metropolis. This is in the middle of the woods. It's like right beside a trailer park. It's a magical shop. And I went in and it was freaking great. It was stocked to the gills. It had really great books and stuff. And I'm like, this is actually the fact that there's this store's out here, and I follow it on Facebook. It's still doing great.
You're like, oh wow, look, there's a barrel of eel's eyes. That's awesome.
I mean, and you've got this is. I'm not saying this politically. I'm not saying this politically at all, but this is like Trump country, and you've got a magic shop. Yeah, and those two things don't seem like they should go together. But
but it was the greatest magic shop you've ever seen.
I know magic shops. And that's astounding to me. So I think we are, and if you look at, again, like the number of people that I've hesitated to talk to about being interested in these topics and go, oh no, totally, I saw a so-and-so once, or I saw this or that, or I think that there was really something to it.
Yeah.
Even since I've really been involved in this, really involved in this in the past 5 years, there's been a change, 100%. Yeah. And so I think we're in the middle of that cycle, and I think that might be kind of what Belay's getting at, not just UFOs, but just like this other imaginal side of reality in general, pushing its way, edging its way more into our reality to serve as that sort of control mechanism to keep things balanced so we don't end up,
Right. So then, of course, the next question is like, what in the hell is running that show?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because that implies intention behind it, and that something that it has a purpose. And then, so is that purpose just built into the universe, or is it part of our consciousness? I mean, of course, I know you can't answer these questions. But
then you go, as a Christianity, there's a strong urge to sort of let God in through the back door.
Right.
And I think that there is a spiritual, honestly, where I fall into nowadays is there being a spiritual ecosystem that we have. And people hear that and they're like, oh, there's, heaven and hell. And no, I don't mean that. I mean that there's, there are, just like with people on the street, there are good people and there are bad people and there are people who are in between. Or maybe like, those old Dungeons and Dragons affinities, lawful good, lawful neutral.
Chaotic neutral.
Or true neutral, chaotic. I think that's probably, if I had to guess, I would say that that's what we're dealing with. But at the same time, it almost...
The spiritual realm is hierarchical, according to every account that you can look at in history and in modern times, right?
The question is it hierarchical because it actually is objectively hierarchical, or is it hierarchical because that's a human impulse to make it hierarchical, so it decides to represent itself?
Well, you should ask me hard questions.
Yeah. I had this exact same question was posited to me by, I think it was Jerry on the Nox Mente podcast, and he was like, what is reality? And I thought that I'd thought about that, because I think that
that's a hard question.
And here's the thing, like the whole simulation idea feels a little bit wankery to me, because it just seems like that's
more materialism.
Yeah.
It seems like that's, I've seen The Matrix and I'm into computer science, so maybe it's a simulation. Like, I don't
right.
It feels like a very human way of looking at this question as to what reality.
Well, that's just pushing the buck,
it's kicking the can out of the universe and into the other one or whatever.
If I had to be honest, I'd probably look at more Eastern ideas like creation wanted to observe itself or something. I feel like that's a lot more elegant way than saying like, oh, well, what we've got to do is we've got to level up out of this reality into the next reality, and then it's turtles all the way down.
First the elephants, then the turtles all the way down.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of stuff about that idea that I do find parsimonious.
Well, I had a conversation with a good friend of ours recently. We were, it's one of those party conversations where they're partying, and he's like, okay, bro, so what's up with the simulation idea, right? So we start talking about it. And I think the point that I was trying to make to him is like, look, don't take the word simulation literally. Which
is something that I'm very guilty of.
Right.
Every time I hear it. And it takes me a second to find my footing.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean because I agree with, I can't remember who said it exactly, but going back to the UFO stuff, there's a famous quote from somebody who said, look, I think that these things, when you look at all the cases and when you look at the way that they interact with us and the way they act, it seems like they are coming from a place of pure information. And the fact that they can interact with us implies that we are also a place of pure information.
That sounds like a Mac Tony's quote.
Could be Mac Tony's, yeah.
Yeah.
So going with that idea, like this can be a place of pure information. Like Kyle was saying with quantum physics, when you get down to it, there is no material. There's just frequency, right? Frequency and vibration. So what you end up with is numbers that can describe all that. So that's pure data, right? It's pure information. And so a simulation, so my friend he asked me, he was like, well, why, how come we look at it and in some ways it seems to act like a computer program? And I'm like, well, because when we design simulations, we design them to look like the real world. So the correlation may be the other direction, right? Our simulations are designed to look like this world. That doesn't mean when we look at this world and we see it looks like a simulation that it means it is one.
Right. Right. It sort of reminds me of this idea that Terrence McKenna had, that if you could actually if you could trip for 10 years in the same, under the same influence, would you navigate that reality just as well as you navigate your normal consciousness reality?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If that was it's just, we're never there long enough. So
all right, Watcher, you going to try it? Try it, bro. Trip for 10 years and let us how it goes.
I heard, you probably heard this too, but I heard on Graham Hancock's latest Joe Rogan interview that apparently, the DMT guy, I'm drawing a blank on his freaking name, but Rick Strassman.
Yeah, Strassman,
with the Japanese researchers, managed a way to actually keep the DMT high going.
Yes, right. Yeah, they got some kind of controlled drip. Yeah.
So this is it's to me that's like the opening. It's like the prologue to a more interesting version of Star Trek. It's like, oh, here we go. Now we're boldly exploring new worlds.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean to poo-poo. Well, I kind of get obnoxious, I'm sure, sometimes about poo-pooing my interest in space and extraterrestrials and stuff like that. It's not that it just doesn't seem to. I just, I look at space news and I'm like, okay. I mean, I have a little bit of a gatekeeper thing, not to the extent of being like a flat earther by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a little bit of a gatekeeper issue with, the organizations that were being told what's out there beyond the atmosphere.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's not me saying, I'm not a moon hoaxer. I'm not, this or that or the other, but I remember seeing, the picture of the black hole, which is cool. It's a great scientific moment, but it's kind of is that?
I kind of felt the same.
What is that?
Yeah.
You kind of know what I mean. It's kind of like, what is this? This doesn't have any real bearing on anything, I don't think.
Right.
And again, it's
unless it gets closer, it's probably not a big deal.
It's just I believe, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a lot of the photos, like nebulae and whatnot, are colorized, right?
Well, yeah, they have to do a sort of a frequency correction, right? Because they're looking at them with radio telescopes and stuff, which we can't see radio waves. So what they do is they take the frequencies of radio waves that they're seeing and they sort of say, okay, this set will be blue and this set will be green and this set will be red, and then that way we can look at it and see visually what the radio information is telling us.
It's basically I think of it in terms of like audio. If you had some sound
audio
in ultrasonic that we can't hear, you just lower the frequency that it's audible.
Right.
Now I can't wait for people to say that Josh Cutchin's a flat earther or doesn't believe in space or something.
Yeah, I know he's talking about turtles and elephants.
But I do like to engage with that because I think that's the funny thing about the flat earthers and why they've gained so much traction is because if you are interested in any of these subjects, you get where they're coming from on some level.
Yeah. Well, I get their mistrust of these organizations.
Yes.
For sure. Mm. Never a straight answer. No Americans in space anymore.
And what that says about gatekeepers and whatnot.
I also think that in some sense, I think the flat Earth things, it looks like a psyop.
You mean the flat Earth thing itself looks like a psyop?
Yeah, at least some of the big names that are pushing it, so I don't know if you listen to Grimerica, but they did an interview of I can't remember the guy's name, a flat Earth guy, and he's very psyopy. He's got this condescending, I know more than you sort of. He sounded like Richard Dawkins. But he's a flat earther. It was, you know what I'm saying? He had the same way of talking to people. You're an idiot. I know more than you. Use your adult. David Weiss. He was. Yeah.
I think a lot of these things that get pushed on us. Because I've yet to meet someone who genuinely thinks that way. And, I think that there are a lot of things in our world, a lot of divisions and divisiveness that are deliberately engineered.
Yeah.
Because most people I meet are nice people. Most people I meet aren't mad at me if I misgender them. Most people I meet aren't Nazis.
Right.
Most people you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we only see the worst of us, I think, on social media and whatnot. But as far as the disinfo thing, I've heard some people, say the same thing, that it's a mixture of pushing that agenda to make people on the fringe deliberately look stupid and the idea that it's just trolls involved too.
Right.
I have a friend who theorized that the Tom Belong to the Stars agency was sort of a psyop to study how to weaponize feelings of religiosity in the UFO community among people who are not inclined to spirituality. Because there's plenty of religiosity in the UFO community, but it never seems to grab onto those people who think that it's nuts and bolts craft. Until you look at some of the TTSA people, and I've put a moratorium on myself from complaining about them, but there are some that, you know, this is still on my Twitter, so I'll go ahead and say this, but I took an excerpt from an article that was just really glowing about the TTSA thing, and I replaced Tom DeLonge with Marshall Applewhite, and I replaced TTSA with Heaven's Gate, and I replaced Disclosure with The Ascension.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it reads like a cult thing. It's like, you know, I believe that they're pushing the state back, but this is when it's going to happen, and we just need to, you know, really we should all trust that they know what they're doing. And it's like, it's really creepy.
Yeah.
Now I know that there are some very level-headed people in TTSA, and I've talked to some friends of mine off the air. And in candid situations where there's something to this, you can't ignore it, but you know, there is a lot of wankery, I think, around the To the Stars Academy stuff. But there's some of it has teeth, and we'll just see.
Yeah,
where that leads.
Well, I mean, like if you can break it all down to a nutshell, the Disclosure people are basically like, the government's been lying to us this whole time, so we need to get them to tell us the truth, and they're totally going to tell us the truth this time, guys. Right? Like that's that's.
I think it was Greg Bishop that might have said, and I think he apologized for it, so I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But,
go ahead.
But he said, and it's an apt metaphor. It's like it's like the beaten housewife taking her husband back in when he presents her with a bouquet of roses.
Oh yeah, wow.
It's like I know that you always wanted, you know, I know that you always wanted to go to Biloxi for the weekend. So
yeah,
you know, I'm taking you to Biloxi. I'm sorry I gave you a black eye. It's
right.
Like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean,
it is a strange thing,
and it's just like anything. There's going to be I think there's going to be a mixture of real truth in there and some astounding stuff, and I think it's going to be a mixture of an agenda that needs to be pushed. I'm just ready for something to happen.
Yeah.
And of course, this is where people write in and say something has happened, but I'm ready for something a little bit more impactful to happen.
Well, now that we're on the topic of disinformation, I just like this is kind of going back to this point you were making earlier, and I'll get to it. It's like you said, we look into alternative history, and looking at all these religions and all these legends or secret societies and stuff like that, you start to get this idea that there's all this hidden information, you know, all of this hidden knowledge, and it's like, why are they hiding it from us, right? After looking into it for a long time, I started to get the idea that they are not hiding it from us, they're hiding it for us. Because if it was out there in plain sight, that was obvious, it would be destroyed by those who want power over people.
Yeah.
So the knowledge is hidden in plain sight, and it's put into these memes that people that don't really will never know what it means. They are always repeating it and repeating it.
Yeah, parables.
So that eventually somebody who comes along that can decipher it will be able to know this truth or whatever. And you were kind of describing the cycles that we go through with, you know, from paganism to religion to atheism, and sort of like this cycle, and like, you know, who's putting out this information or who's organizing this. And I think that it might actually be an extremely ancient tradition that's being carried on to organize this sort of hiding in plain sight knowledge to protect it for people in the future, while also hiding it from the people who are seeking power.
Destroy it now. Yeah.
You know, I think that's one option. The other option too is that if you ever, I don't know if you guys ever read Chris Noll's Secret Sun blog.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously onto something. Sometimes I just wonder if sometimes there are certain truths or certain symbols that aren't so pervasive that they don't just constantly emerge from this whole thing. Like, reality doesn't just keep on throwing things up that are certain truths. I mean, you know, in other words, it's not that the yellow butterfly that landed on your car today represents your dead Meemaw, but it's rather that there's a symbolism behind yellow butterflies, and that it's just not to say Gaia, but it's just like reality communicating with you in a certain way as opposed to it being specifically for you.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some things like that, some ideas and whatnot that are truths that just can't be repressed. But I mean, I'm attracted to the idea that we are not as in control of things as we think we are in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find that idea really attractive. And I think that there are some people who fight that, and I think there's some people who definitely do a pretty damn good job of wresting control from whatever this other thing is. But I do think that that existence is symbolic, and it's just up to us to try to parse it all out.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been fantastic. I know you gotta.
It's been too short. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right.
Guys,
it's totally cool.
I got to get back to babies. But
yeah.
let's do this again, please. It's
absolutely.
So much fun.
Look, and Sarai can't get mad at you because he's also coming on the show in a couple of weeks. So
I know, right?
You know. Okay. So
so thank you so much.
Yeah.
For coming
so
on,
give people your social media. Tell them where to find you. What you're working on.
JoshuaCutchin.com is a website, at Joshua Cutchin on Twitter, which is not super inventive, I know. I have 3 books out, Trojan Feast, The Food and Drink Offerings of Aliens, Fairies, and Sasquatch, The Brimstone Deceit, which is all about smells and a lot of the common smells that you find in the paranormal. The latest one is Thieves in the Night, which is a brief history of supernatural child abduction. It's the scary one. And then I've got another book coming out this fall. Well, I say book. It's probably going to be 2 volumes with me and Timothy Renner, called Where the Footprints End, which is all about. I was about to say obnoxious Bigfoot, anomalous Bigfoot.
Sam Squanch.
Yeah, right. All about anomalous Bigfoot and sort of things that don't fit the giant ape in the woods model. So.
Nice. Well, I can't recommend Trojan Feast enough. That book is fantastic.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I've got to I want to get the other 2, and I'm going to go through them. You need to get them on audiobook, man. You need to get some.
I know. I've had some people bug me about it, so I actually need to try to find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
See.
And also, what's the name of your new band, and can we find it?
Funk Cake. Yeah, you can find it. I actually, this is kind of maybe none of my musician friends listen to this stuff. I actually ended up replacing one of the guys, so I'm not on the website yet. Funkcakeband.com.
Awesome.
And there's social media links all over there.
All right.
Sweet. All right, man. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll do this again.
Guys. Sounds good. Take care. I had a great time.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Serpent podcast. Fantastic interview with Joshua Cutchin.
Absolutely.
In the 100 by 100 by 100 time cave hole.
Hello.
Yeah, so
it's a cave.
I would like to thank all of you listeners for putting up with the audio quality in the time cave hole.
Yeah.
Since we've been doing the Contact at the Cabin Zoom conferences, where we require better internet than at our house. And this week, we just left the studio set up at the time cave hole.
Right. Because we have no internet right now at our house. And
but I've been told that those cell towers are being fixed.
Yes.
As we speak.
That's right.
So we should get our LTE back.
Right. So the next podcast you're going to hear are going to be coming from a tent somewhere in Colorado. They'll be great.
And
quality.
the sound quality will be amazing. Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. I've been talking to Darren from Grimerica about the equipment he's bringing, and so we're coordinating on that. We're going to be bringing some podcasting equipment. He told me that there's going to be a room in the lodge set aside for podcasting equipment and for podcasting. So hopefully we'll set everything up there, and then we'll probably do some roundtables. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun. So
yeah, we basically decided, and I don't know if you already said this because I was doing other things, But I'm bringing my small interface and my computer and mics and mic stands. So we will not be doing handheld sampler. Well, we'll have some of that.
Yeah.
But
He said that they're bringing that stuff too.
Okay.
So I am going to bring my sampler, so we may have some audio from that.
It will be an amalgam of
Yes.
various audio quality
Yeah.
type stuff. And we're also thinking about doing a restarting an old, never published TV series we call Every Hour on the Hour.
That's right.
That we used to make with a handheld video camera when we were on road trips.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about testing that out as a little podcast, a video podcast gimmick.
Yeah. I already told History Shift. I was like, bro, we're probably going to be sending you a whole bunch of little clips of Every Hour on the Hour while we're on the road trip. And you could put it together and upload it to YouTube. He was like, man, that sounds awesome. I'll do it. So
Yeah,
he's all in.
Every Hour on the Hour is it's basically a whole season of very short episodes. Each episode begins on the hour.
Exactly
On the hour.
the hour.
Every single hour of the extremely long road trip.
Right.
And they're only like, a minute long, maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're talking a 15-hour trip. We're talking about 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Of a video podcast.
Right.
Of us just becoming
Progressively more
tired and
tired
delirious.
and hypnotized and weird.
It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We might be doing that.
Yep. Yep. So look for that on YouTube, possibly, on the Brothers of the Serpent YouTube channel. But let's get back to this interview with Josh. That was a fantastic interview. He says he wants to do more. He was unable to stay for the entire 2 hours, which is fine.
Hey, we got an hour and a half. That was great.
Guy's got twins. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Hard.
Yeah. Some of his comments on Twitter were right before the twins were born. He was like, everyone who keeps telling me that twins are hard, I know. Stop telling me twins are hard. I had to respond. I was like, twins are going to be hard, but also freaking awesome because twins are badass. So,
Yeah. So I've definitely got a lot more questions for Joshua. And I'm looking forward to talking with him more because it seems like he was really sort of, and of course I haven't read any of his books. Russ has, so I'm a loser. But it seems like he's sort of scratching the surface with this initial conversation on like the bigger picture.
yeah, like he was feeling us out on how we think about stuff.
Yeah,
maybe.
and kind of like, well, just kind of like, he's still obviously developing the way he thinks about the world and is open to, things being different than the way he thinks about them.
Oh, yeah,
he's
absolutely.
open to his mind
Yeah.
changing on these things, and there's a lot of questions and uncertainty.
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
And I've listened to.
The main thing I like about him is that he's just, and I don't know the guy. My experience with him is just years of listening to podcasts with him on there as guests. He was a regular on Where Did the Road Go for years and years. And the main thing I thought about Josh is that he's just a top-notch thinker.
Yeah.
Right. So he has not been doing this paranormal stuff for very long. Like he said, 5 years. Right.
Yeah.
It's not like he's been looking into this stuff for his entire life and he's like in his 80s now and he's got all this wisdom to drop. That's not what's happening. He's a regular, kind of a normal guy, and then he sort of got interested in a few things. He had some experiences and stuff, but then he's decided to like attack the book. He was writing the book, and then that he just exploded onto the scene because no one had ever done any of the correlations that he made in that book.
Wow.
Okay. That was a whole, and then that's why he did the next one about smells. Cause he was like, look, there's this whole thing with weird food in all of these accounts. And that's why you got to read A Trojan Feast, because it is Trojan in the sense of like the Trojan horse. The food is a placeholder for something else. And it always signals change or the beginning or the end of the experience. If you look at ancient mythology and stuff like this, when they're talking about going into the other world, you eat something from there and then you're stuck there. He goes through all that stuff and no one had ever done any work on it. And he just blew everyone's mind with it. It was fantastic.
So is when he did that book, is this like, does he talk about ayahuasca or any of that?
Yes,
kind
he
of stuff?
does.
'Cause,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he talks about that kind of stuff too, but he's just talking about, look, we have these accounts, and there's so the person is like, this happened to me, and I got abducted by greys, or I encountered some, in these fairy tales or whatever, not fairy tales, but these encounters with fairies or whatever, and you see these accounts of food being given or drinks being given, and across all these cases, and so he was basically making comparisons and showing you, like, look, there's something going on here, and it may be symbolic. So I agree with you that he's still sort of figuring things out, like all of us are, but he hasn't been doing it for very long, and he's just a top-notch thinker, and he's able to go around corners of boxes that other people are stuck in.
Yeah, great person to have conversation with. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to throw, you gave a couple of anecdotes from, your experiences, and he's like, oh yeah, that's a common thing. And I'm just like, dang, I want to tell him like all kinds of weird experiences that I've had when I was a kid, and see what he says. Like, are there correlations? That's just really cool.
Yep.
So maybe we could even, I don't know, get him in on some topics that we discussed. We did a little bit, but
yeah.
His thoughts on a lot of
he told me, when I was talking to him back and forth beforehand, that he's interested in the ancient stuff too. He's just his forte is the Fortean stuff. Yeah. I like it. His pun, I was trying to laugh at it, but he was like, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, yeah, because we're talking about nothing is material, right? This stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. I got it, guy. So yeah, like I recommend, again, I've mentioned this multiple times, their podcast, Where Did the Road Go? First of all, Soraya, the guy who runs the show, is also a great thinker like Joshua. Soraya is a little bit more cautious in his thinking. Josh is one of those guys who will he can think out loud, right? Soraya will listen to what you say, and then you'll have a one sentence thing that just explodes everyone's minds, right? Josh will like sit there and just think out loud. And we could, since we were here in a place where we had better internet, we actually just left the video on when we were talking to him, and you could see it happening. One of us would say something, and he'd look up and he'd start thinking, and he's talking about it, and he's thinking, and he's like, and he's looking around, and he's actually engaging with the subject as he goes, and just working his way through it. And then he's making correlations to things that he's researched and so on and so forth. And it's just fantastic to talk to him. So, yeah,
that was really cool.
Yeah, and
I also would like to continue on the old quantum physics conversation with him. That wasn't the purpose of the interview, so I didn't want to keep hammering on that. But
stop being wrong.
I don't know if I'm right. I just like
stop being wrong about quantum physics.
That's just one of my big obsessions. Is everybody knows that listens to this podcast, I get mad about people talking about quantum physics in certain ways. Yeah. And he does too. That's like, I had no idea, like the whole quantum Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Do not say quantum.
Yeah. Do not say quantum Bigfoot. So of course I'm like, tell me about quantum Sasquatch.
But the weird thing is, like, I've been reading this Dean Radin book that you
Supernormal, yeah.
And he talks a lot about the quantum situation, and I just think that there's so much about that is it's this weird
Here we go,
dynamic.
ladies and gentlemen.
It's this weird dynamic. No, that where like all of the implications of it are like do point to certain spiritual or otherworldly or multiple overlapping realities or possible dimensions, but
overlapping time caves?
Overlapping time cave holes.
I knew those were involved somehow. Yeah, man, I don't know what to make of quantum physics. Like since you like sort of sat down with me and were like, look, here's the real measurement problem and this is what's really happening. Like I'm like, okay, I accept what you're saying with it. I still think that there is something weird happening with consciousness, again, because of the tests, and Dean Radin goes through some of that stuff in Supernormal about, like changing random number generators or whatever.
Yeah.
So but I think the thing that's fascinating about this and about most of the subjects we discussed with Josh is this specific thing, is that it keeps you, it doesn't do this to most people, but if you're paying attention to it, it keeps you questioning what's really going on, no matter what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. The measurement problem is something that, it keeps the uncertainty is there because this thing exists. And like, I see this, this may be going back to a sort of I'm not going on a whole what's it called? Intelligent design or whatever, but this idea that the universe is a puzzle that's designed at every level, from the macro on down to the micro, the smallest possible thing, is designed to make you go, what the fuck is going on here? And then the closer you look at it, the more you realize that everything that it appeared to be when you were just sort of not really paying attention but glancing at it is not correct.
Yep, I love that. Everything is backwards.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the fascinating thing about things, quote unquote, on the quantum level and the measurement problem itself is that it's brilliantly designed in such a way that there's this seemingly impassable barrier where we cannot look at the nature of things when there is no interaction with them.
Yeah.
So the moment there is interaction, it becomes something, and that's the only thing. That's the first thing or last thing, whichever way you want to look at it, that we can measure.
Yeah. Or it's almost
but we know that there's something beyond, right? That's cool. That's just really cool.
Like you're saying that there's a sort of a designed-in barrier. Maybe not designed, but there's just however, for whatever reason, the way it's working is that like we cannot actually see the fundamental building blocks of things, because in order to see those, we have to bounce other fundamental building blocks off of them, and it changes their nature by doing that.
Yeah, so it would be really interesting and sort of ironic and awesome at the same time, is that the only way to solve the measurement problem is through psi, this other approach to how the universe works, through consciousness, through meditation, through this otherworldly thing. That's the only way you can observe that quantum particle, or whatever they call it, quantum wave something.
Yeah.
Is to do it through consciousness. Like, consciousness can do it without physically interacting with it.
Yeah.
So you could measure it in that way. Like, that would be crazy. So it's like the universe itself is leading us to fulfill the physics on one end, and there's this barrier at the end where we just cannot do it with physics anymore.
Yeah.
The only way to get there is to go the other direction.
Yeah.
So it inevitably, no matter which direction you go, like if you were sort of, John Anthony West's ancient Egyptians pursuing the path of the spirit in all of these strange ways, then they may have done this and realized like, oh, we can't learn everything about the universe only in this way. So now we start having to build all these massive structures and do all this crazy stuff in the physical to overcome these physical problems too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, no matter which
path you choose, you find that at the end of that path, you discover you need to go on the other one.
Right.
That's really cool.
That would be freaking awesome. And the Watcher wants to know, Watcher says he would love to hear Joshua's take on the bells. The bells in the tower.
I saw you mention that earlier, and I chose not to bring that one up because that's one that, because I have the audio, I always want to be able to play it for people, and I just don't have the audio with me. But yeah, I would love to basically play him that soundbite and just let him. Yeah.
I thought of the same thing though. He would probably recognize, even from the story, you're sitting up in the tower and suddenly you hear these bells.
Yeah, man, that freaking.
And you start talking. Russ starts talking to him. You can hear it in the recording. He's like, they start to go away. He's walking around. He's like, where is that? Where is that? Ding, ding, ding. And they kind of fade off and then stop for a while. And he's like,
are you still there?
Are you still there? Ring, ring.
Yeah, right next to me, dude.
And he's like, oh my God.
That was really close.
That's crazy. But he would probably know. It's like, oh, yeah, that's like a very common fairy folk.
That happens to people right before they vanish without a trace. I thought of that when I was telling him about I was like, man, I'm freaking glad I didn't follow that thing. Will-o'-the-wisp out there. Yeah. I still can see that in my mind's eye. That I remember that night seeing that blue thing drift through across those windows out in the yard.
Yeah. You saw some Marfa lights, but in Georgia?
Yeah. Yep. That's freaky. I didn't know to be scared of it at the time. I thought it was just somebody out in the yard with a flashlight, which was also...
Are you supposed to be scared of it?
Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Be like a child.
Yeah. Oh, wow, what is that? Well, you got anything else you want to talk about with the interview?
Quantum physics. No, I'm just joking.
Stop getting quantum physics wrong. Well, I mean, I have some, we didn't get to do this at the beginning because we had Josh, so I've got some, listener communications.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. We didn't have space for the news this week, folks. Sorry about that. We don't have the keyboard with all our sound effects. We can't.
Yeah, we had a massive lightning storm that took out a bunch of transformers.
Yeah.
Power was out in various places and also
knocked
internet
out our
service. So
yeah,
we've complained about that enough. You guys know this is not the optimal situation, but here it is. I'm just filling in space while Russ looks up other things on
my phone.
His phone.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so you guys remember last week when I read the comment from Wojciech, right? Lubeck, who said we couldn't pronounce his name.
And he was right.
He was totally right. He commented again on the last comment he posted was on the previous Contact the Cabin conference call with Randall. So now he's posted another one on this most recent one, and he says, hey again. Thank you for discussing my last comment, and I appreciate your efforts to pronounce my name. Once or twice, you almost made it. Smiley face. I'm also glad that you came back to the subject of the moon, and it seems that the great Gandalf, Randall, shares my assumptions that the moon may have a cavity inside, but to not make things too sweet, I will add some bitterness to this to comment by complaining that you failed to ask the great magician about the second part of my theory that the moon may be like a vessel which is not fully filled and our Earth attracts the honey filling, thus making the Earth side facing denser and leaving the cavity on the far side, which in turn fixes the moon's position and the denser side always facing the Earth. But I will fully forgive you if you keep pressing Randall on the subject. He may eventually spill the beans or honey someday. Best regards, Wojciech.
He keeps alluding to the idea that he's going to be spilling the beans.
Right.
But he doesn't.
Yeah, that's what Randall keeps saying.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, bro. Forgot to ask him about the honey. But I was thinking about this, after Russ read me your email, and I was like, but if it was full of honey, it wouldn't ring like a bell.
Yeah.
But if it was full of water, or even half full of water,
or wine,
it would, or wine.
Yeah.
Because my analogy was like,
the wine glass.
The wine glass, half filled or 3/4 filled, or however much you fill it, it will, the wine glass itself will still resonate, and it resonates at different frequencies based on how much liquid is inside. So I was thinking about the lunar something thing that they dropped and hit the moon, and it rang like a bell. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know?
So he also sent us an email, same guy. He's like, hello, brothers of the Serpent. I begin to feel like a stalker. However, I don't know how a proper stalker should feel like. So just let me know when you find my emails and comments too frequent or too disturbing. When writing my last comment, I felt tempted to call Randall Winnie the Pooh and accuse him of eating the honey from the moon. Hence the cavity inside. Probably the evil force of the One Ring tempted me, but instead I called him Gandalf, and you must admit that this nickname is more fitting. And I do think that Randall is the Gandalf of our times, who tries to save humanity from evil forces. While most of us are just little hobbits thinking only about filling our stomachs, or orcs mostly preoccupied with waging wars. And he goes on, he explains some stuff about some interesting things about Saruman, which I'm not going to go into here, and Masonic stuff. But then at the end, he says, says, kind regards from a nice Polish city whose name you don't want to know, Wojciech. And so, listen, I'm telling you, Wojciech, the reason I didn't read that stuff is because I still need to think about all that stuff you said. You're sort of comparing Lord of the Rings and a bunch of other things, and I need to look at it more closely. But I wanted to get those basically your two comments in there into this before we go to Contact the Cabin. So I want to tell you, first of all, that the Contact the Cabin conferences are for people who paid to go. And so Kyle and I have been asked to host them and sort of be facilitators for the people who are in the conferences to talk to Randall because they've paid money to go there. So I didn't totally feel comfortable asking a question from somebody who's not going to the conference in those particular things because those were just set up for people who did pay to go to interact with Randall. But what I'm telling you is I am going to talk to Kyle, and I will talk to Randall about this when we're there, and we're not like basically taking up we're not getting in the way of anyone else's time. You see what I'm saying? So we will talk to him about it, and then we'll let you know what he says, or if we get it recorded on a little sampler or something. I just wanted to let you know what was going on there and why I didn't push the issue into the whole liquid. So
yeah, and to be honest, like the whole experience of being invited in to this group of people who are planning and organizing this trip has been nerve-wracking to a certain extent. Like we were guests.
Yeah.
At the Zoom conference, raising our hands and asking questions when we were prompted, to suddenly being sort of like the gatekeepers of the questions that other people had. And it was just like, wow, like it was nerve-wracking to like, I don't want to be a gatekeeper between these other people's ability to ask questions. So we've been trying to not be gatekeepers.
Yeah.
At the same, but what they asked us to do was to make it flow and make it publishable material.
Right.
And we felt like
it was a little bit
extremely
stressful.
Obligated to monitor what people were saying in the chats and make sure everybody had a chance, if they wanted, to come on and speak with Randall, ask him their questions, while also allowing Randall to go on his flows without being interrupted.
Yeah.
So it's been quite an experience. I'll just say that, trying to navigate that.
Yeah, when you got 24 or 25 people in there and the chats are going crazy and they're all asking questions and we're reading all that and trying to listen to Randall and keep up with what he's saying and then trying to find good places we can
interject.
We can stick that person's question in right here, or we can bring this person on to ask this question, and you got to do it in the right spots to not interrupt Randall too much. And
yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is like, that's why I couldn't in good faith, I could have pretended like it was my question, but just for my own sense of well-being, I couldn't in good faith ask a question that came from somebody who was not there because they had paid to go and all that stuff. So I just want you to understand that. But I am going to ask Randall this question and see what he says about it. And I'll get you the answer.
Do you think that if we brought peanut butter to the moon, that we might be able to combine those two things in a tasty manner?
Can we make peanut butter and honey foldovers on the moon?
Maybe the dark side of the moon is peanut fields. We don't know.
That's true. All right. That's all I got.
All right.
I mean, we have other communications, but most of them are requests for us to look at information and then respond, which we can't do right now. So to all of you who sent us emails...
We will look at that information and respond later.
Yes, we just can't do it today. So
we are leaving for the trip basically tomorrow night.
Right.
Which would be early Friday morning.
Yep.
Thank you guys very much for your support. And thanks for listening to the podcast. All of this is about seeking all of the mysteries. And we really appreciate all of you listeners
taking this journey with us.
Yeah.
So trying to find out what the fuck is going on in this universe.
Keep sending emails.
Yeah.
We love it.
We do love it. And like I said, all of you who have sent emails with information, pictures, videos, we will get to them and we will respond to them. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. You can get a hold of us at brothersandserpent@gmail.com.
That's
Send
right.
us emails. Check us out on the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. There's t-shirts, snakeskins page. There's the Encyclopedia. There is the glossary of terms.
That's
all
right.
kinds of tidbits of information.
That's right.
Small pieces to the hilarious puzzle.
That's right. And you guys can follow us on Twitter at Snake Bros with no vowels, SNKBRS. Also, share the shows any chance you get. Give us reviews wherever you can. We appreciate all the good reviews you guys have been giving. Thank you so much. And we will continue to read your review comments and other comments on the show because we love them so much. Unless if you send it to us in Polish, I probably won't be able to read it. But if you just give me your Polish name, I still won't be able to read that, but I'll try. So thank you guys so much for all that. And also, don't forget to donate to our pyramid scheme.
That's right.
Send us to pyramids so we can figure this stuff out. Or, die trying.
And thanks to everyone who has donated.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And that's it. The next you hear from us, we will be in Pagosa Springs. Good night, Adamu.